Hello listeners, this is Kat and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Watch Your Heroes Fall. This will be part 26, chapters 29 and 30. Chapter 29, Phase 4, Face the Music. Come on, what you doing? This is a great song. Just sitting for a minute. Jordan Welch, Sadie Cunningham, Tragedy Girls. Chapter 30, Phase 4, Song 1, Know Your Enemy by Green Day. I miss the toddler, Himiko moans into her oatmeal. She was cute, and she let me ramble. We all let you ramble, Dabi says. But Harry wasn't judgy about it, Himiko replies, nudging his ribs with a fork under the table. Shoto says, Himiko, in all fairness, you are eating oatmeal with a fork. And you're still going to eat with it after it's touched that cretin, Kumpers says, disgusted. Dabi grumbles that he's not a cretin, and Magne points out that they're all cretins, really. Tomura thinks that cretin is a stupid word, and only partially accurate. He's tempted to snap at her, tell her to not lump him in with the rest of them, but he supposes that the road rash and broken ribs he's trying not to feel means that he's already lumped himself in with them. We're gonna see her again, Izuku says, blinking around his spoonful of oatmeal. He sounds surprised when he says it, as if everyone should have known this already. Everyone blinks back at him. Nobody knew this already. How the fuck were they supposed to know when Izuku keeps his lid on tighter than a jam jar? Izuku chews, swallows, and says, She's with Mr. Aizawa at UA. That's very likely where we'll all be at the end of this. Which sure is a fucking surprise, being as most of the league is too old to attend high school. I'm a 31-year-old man, Jean says. I doubt they're going to let me enroll as a first year. Izuku waves him off with a spoon. Just trust me, I'm too tired to explain, and I'm going to need my energy tomorrow. Which is another fucking surprise. Maybe a cooler one than having to go to high school after years of villainy. Tomura's eyebrows arch. What's tomorrow? He asks. He's leaning forward in his corner booth, despite himself and despite his aching ribs. Izuku laughs. For you? Nothing. Your body is still fucked up. You guys are all staying here and staying put. Tomura collapses back into a pouting slouch and glowers. He's not a kid. He can fight too. He's older than Izuku anyway. Momo sighs. Your body isn't in great shape either, Izuku. Hitoshi, who had been half asleep, with his head on the bar a minute ago, nods, looking maybe a little angry. Tomura thinks the anger isn't real anger, maybe just misshapen worry. He's learning. Surrounded by so many fucking people, it would be harder not to learn when worry looks like anger. But it's in less bad shape than almost everyone else's, Izuku points out. It sucks worst of all that he's right. Besides, I won't be in danger. It's a little public performance, that's all. Acting on some of Sue and Ochako's information. He giggles at the pun, and Shoto pats the top of his head with a stupid, infatuated little smile on his face. I'm opposed to this, Kumper says staunchly. He looks more like a dad than most anyone present has ever seen on a person's face. As a villain, all of these little performances have risks. And you keep acting like you don't care if your body fucking disintegrates, Tomura hisses. Does jumping under a collapsing building ring a bell? Magne says with a pointed look. And Dabi adds, or hiding from an organized crime syndicate in a sewer because you literally antagonized them. Izuku points at Dabi. You, specifically, are not allowed to lecture me about taking care of my body. You look like overcooked bacon, and you keep ripping your stitches. Kurogiri interrupts before Dabi can rise to the bait and derail the conversation. But all these points stand, Midoriya. You do not have a good track record for taking care of yourself. Tomura thinks it's strange for Kurogiri to de-escalate a situation. It's not something he's ever done before, although Tomura supposes. All for One had a pretty heavy hand over the back of Kurogiri's neck before. Over both their necks, really. Tomura's been breathing easier lately. You sound like Mr. Aizawa, Izuku huffs. Kurogiri stops, fully pauses, his golden eyes widen and then narrow. After several seconds of inscrutable silence, he finally says, Aizawa is correct. Hitoshi sits straight up next to Momo. Everyone is staring at Kurogiri. Even Himiko recognizes the weird behavior. Tomura says, What was that? Kurogiri seems at a loss for words. Tomura, halfway between panic and excitement, repeats, Kurogiri, what was that? Kurogiri sets down the cup he was wiping. It had been clean even before he started wiping it. He just needed something to do with his hands, like always. He seems adrift, a cloud on a breeze. I'm not entirely sure, he says. Just strange flashes, I suppose. Jean's left arm trembles with a tic. He shakes it out, asks, strange flashes like what? Kurogiri's face contorts with confusion, as much as a mass of smoke can. How old am I? He asks. Tomora's surprised to find he has no idea. Kurogiri has always just been for him. I was created to serve Tomura, but I remember things before Tomura. I remember... He stops himself, shakes his head, and picks up Momo's empty oatmeal bowl from the bar to refill it. No, no, Hitoshi says. What do you remember? Remembering is good. Well, we can't know that for sure, Momo says. Himiko agrees. It could be sad stuff. I don't want Kurogiri to remember sad stuff. Tomura tucks himself tighter into his corner booth. He looks at Kurogiri, who has refilled Momo's oatmeal and set it back in front of her. Kurogiri, he says, and Kurogiri turns to face the child he was born to take care of. Kurogiri, what do you remember? Tomura is stubborn, but he's not stupid. He knows Kurogiri had to come from somewhere. He knows that no natural-born human acts the way Kurogiri does. He knows Kurogiri was not always Kurogiri. He also knows that you can't create love in a vacuum. Nothing, not blood or brainwashing or bionic mutilation, can make a parent love their child. Kurogiri is as good of a parent as Tomura will ever get. But Tomura can't keep him in the delusion all for one created forever, even if that delusion is the only place Tomura has ever felt something alien like love. Kurogiri puts one smoky hand against his head, proving there must be something beneath the smoke, something like a face. Children, he says. On a cloud, I remember sushi. Like with rice and nori, Jean asks, and Himiko shushes him. And a tick yanks at his neck and he shouts a curse word that he tries to stifle with his hand. Kurogiri shakes his head, nods. He doesn't seem sure. A cat named Sushi, on a roof. Aizawa's there. I call him Shota. We all do. Who's we? Hitoshi asks, whispering. You know, Kurogiri's entire speech pattern is changing into something laid-back and whimsical. Hisashi and Nomuri and me, he says, sounding like someone else entirely. I gave him my goggles, 'cause the smoke was hurting his eyes. He almost lost them in a bet. Izuku looks at Tomura with an emotion Tomura doesn't like, but can't quite place. Is it pity? Tomura has no use for pity. So what if Kurogiri sounds like someone else? It doesn't change that he practically raised Tomura. Plenty of people's parents become strangers once the kid grows up, and Tomura is plenty grown up now. He's fully 20 years old. It's not like Kurogiri was ever an NPC destined to be unchanging, with static skill points and personality. Maybe Izuku is just gauging how Tomura's taking this. Maybe Tomura's reading too much into that look. He'll show Izuku. He's fine. He asks Kurogiri, what do they call you? Nomuri and Hisashi and Shota. Kurogiri grabs his head. With the other hand, too, it seems to hurt, remembering. But his face wasn't built in a way that makes pain visible, so it just looks like his golden eyes are slitted, nearly shut. The whole room is holding its breath. Momo and Jean are each holding one of Himiko's hands so she doesn't burst out with impatience, and Compress is holding Jean's other hand for the same reason. Kurogiri is a rock amongst them, but they'll give him this space to be something else too. They're learning that they all deserve that much. And Kurogiri moves as if to speak, but he flickers. All of him. The column of smoke wavers like a dead fire in strong winds, and he sways. Then he falls over with a heavy thud, and the smoke wicks out entirely. And Kurogiri is left as human-looking as the rest of them, with blue hair and exhausted, sunken eyes, shut in soft sleep. Kurogiri is unexpectedly heavy, Magne groans. Being the least injured, she had to be the one to haul Kurogiri upstairs to his room. Kurogiri's mattress had a comforter on it, but it looked untouched. It was actually a little dusty. Hitoshi shook it out in the hallway before bringing it back so they could tuck it around Kurogiri's shoulders. Izuku seemed disturbed by the whole thing, mind running miles faster per minute than anyone else could parse behind his dark eyes. He went to bed, said he needed the energy for tomorrow. Everyone else is back downstairs in the bar now. Himiko's rubbing her wrists together anxiously. She clings to Jean's elbow, trying to be mindful of the scrapes the Shihisaikai left up and down his arms. If Kurogiri isn't Kurogiri, will he still hang out with us? She says. I don't want him to leave. It's his choice if he does or not, Tomura says, but there's a bitter twist to his mouth betraying that the words come from hurt and not maturity. Magne rolls her eyes. Don't be dramatic, she says. He's still one of us. Just because he's got other memories doesn't mean the ones he has with us ain't special. You got memories from before the league, right? Himiko nods, but her eyes well with tears. Jean wraps her in a squeezing hug. She says, My memories before you guys suck, though. His are probably nice, with friends and... She snivels. And a family. And that's the crux of it, truly. Everyone who joined the league stumbled in because they had nowhere else to go. Everyone except the hero students in Kurogiri. I have a family, Momo says, tapping Himiko's shoulder and holding her arms open for a hug. Momo never considered before all of this that she would never find comfort in hugging Toga Himiko, but with Himiko sobbing into her shoulder, Momo finds she can cry a little too. And I wouldn't trade this for the world. You promise? Himiko says into Momo's shoulder. Momo nods. Himiko says, You won't leave me behind because I'm weird and I don't have a family? Of course not, Momo says. Hitoshi nods too. Himiko, what I got may be what the government paperwork calls a family, but I take this over that any day. Shoto smiles a little agreement, where he's sitting next to Dabi, and shoves his hands awkwardly in his pockets. And you do have a family, Himiko, Jean says. Magne says, We're literally right here, kid. Listen, I know I just figured out I still have siblings and, maybe a mom if she wants me back, Dabi says, bopping Shoto on the head with his palm. But that just means I have 2 families. Ain't no way you're getting rid of us, short stack. Comper smiles from a spot at the bar. You guys are as much family to me as anyone ever has been. And Tomura, don't just sulk in the corner, you're part of this too. They all laugh. They expect Tomura to sniff contemptuously underneath all his bandaging, or to mutter derisively about how pointless a family is, or to glare and turn away. They expect him to, at least on the surface, reject them. But Tomura smiles too, his lips cracking with it, and he chuckles and he says, I guess I am, huh? All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 30 of Watch Your Heroes Fall. Chapter 31 will be up next. Hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.